1.2 Muscular System, Alex Lees. Today I'm going to be talking about Section 1 and Section 2 of the muscular system, which include functions of the muscular system, characteristics of muscles, types of muscle tissue, and skeletal gross anatomy. As a physiotherapist, you might need to know about the muscular system because you'll be working on any muscle, on any type of muscle, and you don't know what that muscle is going to be. You also don't know what muscle you're going to be treating next. So by knowing every single muscle in the body, you will be fully prepared for anything that comes your way. Functions of the muscular system. One of the main functions is movement. Movement by pulling across tendons and forcing the muscle to contract and move. There are two different types of movements. Gross and fine. Gross movement is large, coordinated motion such as walking, running, swimming. And then we have fine movements, which are a lot smaller, such as writing and speaking. Another function of the muscular system is breathing. Breathing can only occur with one main muscle, and that is the diaphragm. The diaphragm is a dome-like muscle that can be found just beneath the lungs. When it contracts, it will push down, allowing the lungs to make the chest cavity larger, meaning more air can fit into the lungs. But when it relaxes, it pushes the air out of the lungs. Posture is also a key factor in functions of the muscular system. The muscles that keep good posture and our body upright are the skeletal muscles. These muscles keep our body in the correct position when sitting down or standing. Good posture can only happen if a person has strong, flexible muscles. However, if a person has weak and stiff muscles, this can lead to bad posture and, in later life, can cause joint and muscle pain in the back and shoulders. Heat production. 85% of heat comes from the constant contractions of muscles in our body. When the temperature gets below the optimum level in our body, then the skeletal muscles will start to shiver and try to produce more heat to get the body up to an optimal level. The blood vessels will also contract to maintain body heat in the vital organs such as the heart and lungs. In addition, the body temperature can be brought back to normal by arterioles near the skin. These blood vessels vasodilate and vasoconstrict. They vasodilate to regulate the heat, and if it gets too hot, they'll vasodilate and cool down the body, releasing excess heat through the skin, and vice versa for vasoconstriction. Constriction of blood vessels. I covered that partly in heat production, but this is where we get hot. Our arterioles will vasodilate, allowing heat to escape through the skin, and vice versa if we want to conserve the heat. Heart contraction. The heart contraction is stimulated by nerve impulses and triggers the movement of the muscle. If the impulse is removed, then our heart will relax, allowing our blood to fill up. And when the impulse is triggered again, then it will contract, pushing the blood out around the body. Characteristics of muscle. There are four types of characteristics: excitability, extensibility, contractility, and elasticity. I'm going to go into more detail in these, but excitability is where nerves and neurons Excitability. For a muscle to contract and do work, its cells must be stimulated, most often by the nerve supplying them. Nervous impulse is called the release of a transmitter called acetylcholine, or ACH, at the neuromuscular junction, and the ACH activates receptors on the surface of the muscle cell. ACH is a neurotransmitter that is used at the neuromuscular junction. From all of this, the muscle is stimulated, which makes it contract. Muscle cells contract, and in order for them to retain this ability, they must have extensibility. Your muscle cells can be stretched to about 3 times their contracted length without rupturing. This is important because a lot of coordinated movements is used, and lots of lengthening of the muscle will happen in those movements. For example, when you run, the hamstring in your back of your thigh contracts while your quadriceps are extended and extended. Contractility is when a muscle is excited. The impulse travels along various membranes of the cells to its interior, where it leads to the opening of the calcium channels. Calcium ions flow toward and bind a protein called troponin, leading to changes in the shape and position of troponin and tropomyosin. The upshot is that the myosin binds with small strands within the cells called myofilaments and pulls them along, causing the cell to shorten. Since this is going on simultaneously and in a coordinated fashion, oh, hold on, sorry about that. Since this is going on simultaneously and in a coordinated fashion, many thousands of this will happen and the whole muscle will contract. Section 2. Types of muscle tissue. All of these muscles have different locations. The cardiac muscle is found on the heart, surprisingly. Skeletal muscles are on the bones, and the smooth organs are found, and the smooth muscle, is found in the organs and tubes, such as veins, arteries. The cardiac and skeletal muscle are similar in appearance, as they are both striated and have nucleate, and the cardiac muscle is uni or binucleate, and the skeletal muscle is multinucleate. Whereas the smooth muscle tissue is not striated, but similar to the skeletal muscle, it is uninucleate. The size can differ in many ways. They're all dependent on what they are looking at. The cardiac muscle is relatively small, comparing it to other larger muscles such as the skeletal muscles. Whereas the smooth muscle depends on what it is in, such as an organ, which would be a lot larger than a small tube, vein, or artery. The layers, the cardiac and smooth muscle are both the same, with one endomysium layer, whereas the skeletal muscle has 3 layers of endomysium, perimysium, and epimysium. The control is similar in the cardiac and the smooth muscle, as they are both involuntary. This means that we don't have control of it. It will just do it automatically. Our body just does it anyway. Whereas the skeletal muscle is voluntary, meaning we decide when to contract it and stuff. The innervation system for the cardiac muscle is the autonomic nervous system. This is the same with the smooth muscle tissue as well. However, the skeletal muscle is the central nervous system, as we control it, and yeah. The speed of contraction varies between all of the muscle. They are all very different, in that the cardiac muscle is slow and rhythmic, but also can be fast and rhythmic, which means that it will always be going at a constant pace. The skeletal muscle varies as well, as we choose when we want to contract it and when we don't want to contract it, for example. However, the smooth muscle is it's very slow contraction speed, as in the stomach, for example, we don't want it to instantly contract and force food down through our body immediately without processing it first. The fatigability varies between um, between all of the three different types of muscle tissues. The cardiac is non-fatiguing, meaning it can't work if there's no oxygen, and we don't really want our heart fatiguing because that means we will die otherwise. The skeletal muscle can fatigue, which is good, as we don't want it to be constantly working, just like the heart. Whereas the smooth muscle can't fatigue. This is because we want our arteries and veins to push blood around the body, so we don't die. I might not be able to finish these slides, the skeletal gross anatomy, because I've got 4 minutes left on the recording, but I'll give it a go. Connective tissue's main function is to provide support, flexibility, and strength to the internal organs and structures such as blood vessels and nerves. There are three different types of connective tissue. There is epimysium, perimysium, and endomysium. The epimysium is there to reduce friction against other muscles and bones. The perimysium is a connective tissue inside of the muscle, and the endomysium wraps around each individual fiber. The tendon is made up of connective tissue and continues to wrap around each muscle. The tendon is primarily made up of collagen fibers, which give it structural support. Origins and insertions. In most cases, one end of the muscle is fixed in its position while the other end moves during contraction. The origin is the attachment site that doesn't move during contraction, while the insertion is the attachment site that does move while the muscle contracts. The insertion is usually distal, which means it's further away, while the origin is proximal, meaning closer to the body. For example, you could say the wrist is distal to the elbow, and vice versa. You could say the elbow is proximal to the wrist. Fasciculi. A muscle fascicle is a bundle of muscle fibers surrounded by perimysium. Blood vessels. Blood vessels can be found throughout the body. Sorry. There are five main types of blood vessels: arteries, arterioles, capillaries, and veins. Arteries carry blood away from the heart to other organs. They can vary in size. The largest arteries have special elastic fibers in their walls. This helps to complement the work of the heart by squeezing blood along when the heart muscle relaxes. Arteries also respond to signals from our nervous system, either tightening or relaxing. Arterioles are the smallest arteries in the body. They deliver blood to the capillaries. Arterioles are also capable of constricting or dilating, and by doing this, they control how much blood enters the capillaries. Capillaries are tiny vessels that connect to arterioles to venules. They have very thin walls which allow nutrients from the body to pass into the body's tissues. Waste products from the body's tissues can also pass into the capillaries. For this reason, capillaries are known as exchange vessels. Veins are blood vessels that carry blood back to the heart. They contain valves which stop blood flowing away from the heart, stopping blood clots. Venules are groups of capillaries within a tissue. Venules collect blood from capillaries and drain into veins. I forgot to mention that. I was going to talk about them as well. That is going to do it for part 1 of the the 1.2 muscular system. Thank you.